Hey everybody, it's me, Root Beer, and set 1 of Divine Z came out, which means it's time to get back on the content grind. If you watched the last rambling video that I did, you'll know that I've had Krysrain on the brain for quite a while now, and today I wanted to highlight all of the different ride line options that you can play with Krysrain, because she is kinda generic. Like, there's nothing you need to set up, there's no specific archetype name, no orders. So you have some flexibility in what you can play there. Starting off, we're going to talk about the regular ride line, the one that they intended you to use with Krysrain. The grade 1, when it's revealed by the grade 2, you reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a grade 2 or less normal unit, call it to rearguard circle, add it to your hand if it isn't. And the grade 2 does the same thing when it's rode upon by Krysrain, except it's a grade 3 or less normal unit. The pros for this ride line is that it is just a free +2, like no matter what you draw, you're always going to get something, whether that's defensive power from the triggers or just bodies on the board. The downside to this ride line is that you are subject to RNG. You get value out of it no matter what, but it still doesn't feel very good if you just check 2 triggers in a row. Next up, we have the Aesthesis ride line. A very simple ride line that's also completely generic. The grade 1, when it's placed on Vanguard Circle, you can call a grade 1 or less card from your drop zone at rest. And then the grade 2, when it attacks, you choose one of your rear guards and you can return it to your hand. The advantage of the Aesthesis ride line is that it gives you a lot of simple, straightforward benefits. The grade 1 kind of helps recover some advantage by getting back whatever you discard from the ride line, so if you have like a Yuika or just like a bunch of triggers, you can get them back, which can help to simplify the early game. You don't have to think about what you're dropping for your ride line as much. And the grade 2 allows you to just aggro your opponent relatively unpunished, similar to what Franquette will do for the deck when set 2 releases. There's a lot of benefit to just dropping a card from your hand and attacking, and especially if you combine it with Yuika, you can just like dump a full board, attack, and then get them all back so your opponent can't damage deny you. The ride line doesn't have any major downsides to it other than just being kind of low impact. You're not really gaining any resources or thinning your deck or anything like that. Next up, we're going to talk about Wista. Unlike the previous ride lines we've discussed, Wista does require some additional cards to be used. The grade 1's ability is that when it is rode upon, you can put a card from hand to your soul to search a gem order from your deck, which means you have to be playing a gem order. And the grade 2, when you play a gem order, lets you draw a card. In this case, the gem order we would be considering is Crossing Illumerays. Illumerays, when it's played, lets you draw a card and give your Vanguard 5k. The rest of the text is not relevant for our purposes. The benefits of this ride line are that you get 2 additional soul, one from the grade 1 Wista and one from putting Illumerays into soul. Searching out the Illumerays lets you thin your deck a little bit. And at the end of the whole sequence, after you've put everything into soul and drawn all your cards, you will go +1 in card economy. The main downside to playing Wista is that Illumerays is a Garnet in your deck. It is only the 1 card, but you do have to make space for it. And if you draw, or worse, damage it early, then you will negate some, if not all, of the benefits of the ride line. Drawing it means losing out on an extra soul charge and no longer being able to thin the deck. And damaging it just negates the ride line entirely, they just won't do anything that game. It won't happen too often, but the times that it does are just gonna feel really bad. Next up, we have Cyana. Whereas the other ride lines have been focused on getting some sort of card advantage, Cyana's main utility is from her defense. Both the grade 1 and 2 have the same ability where, at the end of the battle it was attacked by a rear guard. If nothing was placed on the guard circle that battle, your opponent either discards a card from their hand or binds the rear guard that attacked. And then the grade 1 can also draw you a card and bounce the front row back to your opponent's hand. So there is still a little bit of advantage there, but the main thing we're focusing on is the defensive utility. As the era has progressed, people have become more comfortable with just aggroing early, and a lot of the DZ ride lines just call a guy. And so it's worth considering Cyana's utility to help equalize against early rush a little bit. And that is the main advantage of playing this ride line. The main downside to Cyana is your opponent just might not care. There are decks like Zorga or now Rezael that take advantage of the drop zone and probably don't mind the discard too much. And then there are decks like Rorora where it's like, yeah, I can just bind a plant token, who cares? And then of course there's no guarantee that your opponent was ever going to aggro you anyways. And finally, last but not least, we have Marlene. Now, this one might not seem super generic because the grade 2 does require you to ride Marlene. However, the grade 1 is powerful enough to consider running the ride line anyways. So the grade 1, when it's rode upon by the grade 2, allows you to call up to one grade 2 or less normal unit from your hand. Then if you called a card, you can search your deck for one card with the same card name that you called and put it in your hand. In other words, you can just clone any grade 2 or less normal unit in your hand. That is a very powerful utility. This can be used to clone PGs and bolster your defense. You can also just grab an important rearguard that maybe you want an additional copy of. Let's say your opponent's being very aggressive early and you want to fight back, but you don't necessarily want to lose an important rearguard. You can call it off of the grade 1 and then get another copy to your hand, so you have a little bit of security there. And of course, by using this ability, you are also just deck thinning. The downsides to this are, of course, that the grade 2 doesn't do anything, and it's very subject to what your hand actually looks like. It's all well and good if you had a strong opening hand with lots of cards to duplicate, but if your hand is all like grade 3s and triggers, then your options are a lot more limited, if not non-existent. Plus, even if you do like search a PG, you still gotta get it back into your hand. We can't just bounce it back with the grade 2 because we're not playing Marlene in this case, so you're gonna have to find something like Yuika to help supplement the grade 1. Overall, still a very powerful utility, but kinda needs optimal scenarios to shine. And that's all the ride lines I think are worth considering. Overall, I think the default ride line is good. A free +2, even if they end up being both triggers, is nothing to scoff at. Astasis and Wista both feel like very strong ride lines to consider. I really like what Franket is going to do for Krysrain in set 2, and being able to replicate some of that early utility in Astasis sounds promising. And similarly, I found myself using a lot of soul between like Yuika and Valshablan, so extra soul from Wista also sounds pretty nice. Cyana I'm not fully sold on, to be honest. Like, it does have a benefit, but it doesn't feel as tangible as the other ones. There are decks that just don't care about her ability, and your opponent always has the option of just not playing into it, and then you're left wondering, are they really playing around Cyana, or did they just never intend to aggro in the first place? And Marlene has a very powerful utility, but is subject to the quality of your hand. And that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully, once I get the rest of my mail, I can start hammering out deck profiles, and we can have more discussions about everything else in DZBT01. But for now, thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye!